I'm Adam, 32 years old, and if you'd told me 5 years ago that the biggest betrayal of my life would come wrapped in ribbon and applause, I would have laughed in your face. But that was before the lake house. Before the endless weekends hauling rotten boards, sanding down windowsills, scraping mold from basement walls, and wondering if my back would ever forgive me. Before my hands grew calloused from hammering beams, before I knew what joist hangers were, before I lost holidays, birthdays, and God knows how many nights of sleep. All because I wanted to do something good for the family. The house had been a wreck. An old, weathered thing that had sat half forgotten at the edge of Lake Caro, barely more than a memory of summers past. My grandparents used to bring us there as kids, back when the dock was still intact and the water didn't smell like dead fish. After they passed, nobody touched it. My parents never had time. My sister Brielle was too busy building her brand. And well, I had just gotten laid off, living on severance and half a dream. So when I offered to fix it up, it felt like a purpose. My parents were hesitant at first. "It's a lot of work," my dad had said. "You sure you want to take that on?" But I insisted. I told them I'd handle it, that I'd use my savings, my skills, and my time. I just asked one thing in return, that they keep it in the family. No selling, no flipping, just keep it. It was meant to be a legacy, a place where we could make new memories. For the next 5 years, I became the unofficial caretaker of that house. I worked a full-time job during the week and drove up every Friday night. I learned everything: plumbing, drywall, roofing. Watched videos at 2 a.m. on how to sand and stain hardwood floors. The place started to shine again, slowly but surely. I replaced the roof myself, added a wraparound deck, rebuilt the dock from scratch. Every summer, I imagined the family barbecues we'd have. The grandkids someday learning to fish off the end of that dock. I even kept a journal of the restoration, with before and after photos, planning to show them all one day. I guess that's the part that really makes it sting. Last month, my sister got engaged to a guy named Landon. Tall, charming, the kind of guy who wore loafers with no socks and called people chief. Brielle adored him. My parents adored him more. I stayed out of it, offered my congratulations and a firm handshake, but I didn't really click with the guy. Something about his laugh felt rehearsed. Anyway, the engagement party was a big deal. Catered, of course. Held at my parents' estate, with a string quartet and champagne I couldn't pronounce. I showed up in slacks and a button-down, same as always. I'd finished sealing the final coat of varnish on the lake house kitchen counters the night before. Still had sawdust under my nails. The party started off fine. Too many speeches, too many toasts. Then, about an hour in, my mom clinked her glass and said, "Everyone, we have a very special surprise for our bride and groom-to-be." She smiled at Brielle like she was announcing a royal coronation. "We've decided to gift you something truly meaningful. A symbol of family, of love, and of new beginnings." They handed Brielle and Landon a folder, tied with a gold ribbon. People leaned in. Brielle opened it slowly, held up a thick stack of papers with a golden seal on the top. "The Caro Lake House," she whispered, eyes wide. There was a pause, then a wave of clapping. My stomach dropped. I stood there, frozen, a glass of warm white wine in my hand, while the crowd oohed and awed. Landon laughed, actually laughed, and clapped me on the back like we were buddies. "Thanks for doing all the work, bro. Makes it easy on us, huh?" My mother didn't even look at me. My father smiled like he'd solved world peace. And my sister? She beamed like it was her birthright. "It's perfect," she said. "Exactly what we need. We can have the wedding there, too. Imagine the photos." I didn't say anything, just nodded and excused myself to the restroom. Locked the door. Washed my hands even though they were already clean. I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. Later that night, I left early. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't take any of the leftover mini cupcakes. I drove straight to the lake house, sat on the deck I had built with my own two hands, and stared out at the moonlit water. I thought about every splinter I'd pulled from my fingers, every dollar I'd poured into new fixtures, every winter weekend I'd spent in a freezing cabin just to make it livable. And then I remembered something. A tiny, overlooked detail. When I had started the renovation, my parents had offered to sign over limited ownership rights so I could apply for local grants and permits more easily. They had never finished the paperwork. We'd started it, had the forms notarized, but they had never followed through with final signatures. Technically, they hadn't transferred anything. They thought it was theirs, but legally, it was still in limbo. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I pulled out every email, every document, every receipt I had. I went through my renovation logs, the inspection reports, the property filings, the contractor agreements, all in my name. The next morning, I made a few calls. A real estate attorney I knew from a side project, a notary public, the local records office. It took hours, but by the end of the day, I had filed for a transfer reversal. It wasn't theft. It wasn't sabotage. It was simply correcting an error, an accidental oversight, as my lawyer put it. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I let the silence sit. 2 weeks passed. I went back to work, ate dinner alone, waited. Then one evening, around 6 p.m., I got a text from Brielle. What's going on? Why can't we get in? Another from my mom. Call me. Urgent. And then, a missed call from Landon. I didn't answer. I just sipped my coffee and waited for the next message. It came an hour later from my dad. The dock is gone. What's happening? We saw a for sale sign outside the house. Please respond. I set my phone down. They had no idea that wasn't even the worst part. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, like some dramatic movie climax where the hero stands tall while the villains cower. But honestly, I just felt tired. Bone deep tired. I'd spent so many years pouring everything into that house, not because I wanted recognition, but because I thought I was doing something good, something for the family. It was supposed to be a symbol of unity. I never expected applause, but I never expected betrayal either. The calls kept coming. My voicemail filled up. Brielle left me a long, rambling voice message, half indignation, half panic. You need to fix this. Mom and Dad said it was ours. Landon already told his friends we'd host the wedding there. We posted about it. You're making us look stupid. She didn't say my name once. Eventually, I got a text from my mother. Just one sentence. We need to talk. This has gone too far. Gone too far. I almost laughed. They stole 5 years of my time, sweat, and money, and I was the one going too far? I ignored it. Instead, I drove up to the lake house that weekend. The air smelled like pine and old water. Peaceful. The new for sale sign stood proud on the lawn, and the fresh gravel driveway I'd laid crunched under my tires. I walked up to the porch, my porch, and unlocked the new deadbolt I'd installed. Inside, everything looked perfect. The light caught on the kitchen backsplash I'd spent a whole weekend aligning just right. The cabinets I'd built from scratch gleamed with fresh polish. The dock, which I had indeed dismantled plank by plank last week, was stacked neatly behind the shed, ready to be repurposed for a new owner who might actually appreciate it. I sat down in the living room and reread the draft listing from the realtor. We'd priced it just right, enough to make a statement. I had no intention of keeping the house anymore. Not after what they did. I'd already found a new property 3 towns over, smaller, humbler, and all mine. It was around then that the knock came. I opened the door to find Landon, hands on his hips, jaw tight. Behind him, my dad stood with that disappointed dad face I'd seen too many times as a teenager. And my mother, well, she was already on the verge of tears. Landon spoke first. This is insane, man. You can't just take back a gift. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Funny, I never gave it to you. He scoffed. Your parents did, and they never had the right to. Legally, the property was never fully transferred to them. You accepted a gift they didn't own. My dad stepped forward. We're family, Adam. This isn't how family handles things. I stared at him. You're right. It's not. Family also doesn't erase someone's name from a 5-year project and pretend they didn't exist. My mom tried to interject, but I held up a hand. You all made a choice. You unveiled my work like it was yours. You gave it away without asking me, without even a thank you. That wasn't a mistake. That was a decision. Landon looked at me like I was the crazy one. You're ruining everything over a technicality. No, I said calmly. I'm protecting something I cared about. And I'm done letting people take from me just because they think they can. My dad started to raise his voice. We were trying to do something special for your sister. She's getting married, Adam. Can't you see that? I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. You know what's special, Dad? Respect. Gratitude. Basic human decency. Maybe if I'd seen any of that, things would have gone differently. They stood there, speechless. I gave a polite smile. Now if you'll excuse me, the realtor's coming by to take photos. I walked past them, down the steps of the porch, and toward the lakeside, where the sun was starting to dip into gold. I heard them mutter behind me. Brielle wasn't with them, I noticed, but I didn't turn around. I didn't know them another word. A few days later, the listing went live. That's when things got messy, eh? Brielle went online, blasting me on every platform she could find. Long Instagram stories filled with tears and passive-aggressive quotes about betrayal and toxic siblings. She showed photos of the lake house, photos I had taken during the renovation, and wrote captions like, "Was supposed to be our forever home, and some people only give to get." Her followers, most of whom didn't know the full story, flooded the comments with sympathy and outrage. Some even found my profile and sent me DMs telling me I was selfish, cruel, heartless. I stayed silent. At first, until one comment on her latest post caught my eye. It was from a verified account I recognized, someone from one of those viral DIY home reno pages. They wrote, "This is wild. These pics look identical to the house Adam H. restored. Same tile. Same countertop. Weird coincidence." I didn't reply, but I saved the thread. 2 days later, the story shifted. Someone from a local home design blog reached out to me. They'd seen the property listing and realized it matched photos from a renovation forum I had posted in years ago. They asked if I'd be willing to share the real story behind the lake house. I thought about it. I thought about 5 years of silence, of letting everyone else control the narrative. And then I said yes. That's when everything changed. The article went live the following week. Nothing sensational, just a clean, detailed write-up titled "The Man Behind the Lake House: 5 Years of Restoration, Family, and Fallout." It featured side-by-side progress shots from when I first took on the crumbling structure to what it looked like after the final varnish dried. I'd sent them a few pictures, gave a brief interview, and kept my tone measured. I didn't name names. I didn't take jabs. I simply told the truth. But the truth doesn't need drama to hit hard. It just needs to exist. And once it did, everything snowballed. The comments were brutal, but this time, they weren't aimed at me. People started putting two and two together. Some dug up Brielle's posts and compared them to my old renovation blog. One user even screen recorded an Instagram story of hers bragging about not lifting a single manicured finger while Landon handled the deck, and matched it to a photo of me. Midway through building that same deck, sweat soaking through my shirt. Soon, the internet did what it always does when injustice smells fresh. Memes popped up. One had a side-by-side of Landon grinning at the engagement party and a still of me sanding kitchen counters with the caption, "Built the dream, got slapped with a thanks bro." A popular interior design account reposted my before and afters and tagged it #NotAFamilyGift. Even a few lawyers chimed in, discussing the legality of conditional transfers and incomplete deeds. That part made Landon livid. He texted me multiple times. "Dude, call off the vultures. You're ruining Brielle's reputation. You've made your point. Just stop. You think this makes you look noble? You look pathetic." I never replied, but I did forward them to my attorney, just in case. Then came the family group chat. Now, for context, the group chat had been dead since the engagement party. Not even a happy birthday message from me earlier that month. But suddenly it lit up. "Mom, Adam, we need to put this behind us. We're family. Dad, these posts are getting out of hand. Let's be adults and move forward. Brielle, I hope you're happy. Landon lost a sponsor deal because of this. Our wedding planner just dropped us. Mom again. Adam, please. Everyone is hurting." I stared at the screen for a long time, and then I typed a single message. The only person who was hurting before this was me. You just didn't care enough to notice. Left it at that. No response. They went quiet for 2 days. Then something strange happened. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. They called again, then texted, "Hi Adam, this is Jonathan Wilkes from Wilkes Realty. I represent the buyer interested in the Carroll Lake property. She'd like to meet with you directly, if you're open to it. She has a very specific proposal." Now, this was unusual. The listing had only been live for a little over a week. We'd received a few offers, some above asking, but my realtor had advised we wait and field more interest. Still, the phrasing of that message got my attention. A specific proposal. I replied, set a time, and met the buyer 2 days later. She arrived in a sleek, quiet car. Stylish, mid-40s, confident. Introduced herself as Natalie. We walked through the house. She didn't say much at first, just looked. Touched the stair rail I'd refinished. Ran her fingers across the reclaimed dining table. stepped onto the porch, and inhaled deeply. And then, as the sun dipped low over the lake, she turned to me. "I want to buy it," she said plainly. "Not just the property. I want to keep it exactly as it is. I want to feature it in my show." I blinked. "Show?" She smiled. "I produce a series called Restored Retreats. We highlight unique rebuilds, especially those with personal stories. I'd like to center a full episode on this house. Your story, the betrayal, the rebuild, the comeback." I wasn't sure what to say. I wasn't chasing fame. I wasn't trying to become a symbol of anything. I just wanted peace. But she must have seen the hesitation on my face, because she added, "The episode won't just show off the house. It'll show off you. You built this with your own hands. People need to see that." I told her I'd think about it. And I did. All night. Then I remembered what Landon had said. "You're ruining Brielle's reputation." I smiled. Because if I said yes, the episode would air just before their wedding. And that wasn't even the worst part. I took a week to think it over, walking the shoreline every morning, sipping black coffee on the porch I'd rebuilt, and watching fog settle over the lake like a secret it didn't want to share. I wasn't impulsive. I never was. That was half the reason the betrayal stung so badly. I'd spent years making careful choices, showing up for people, letting them take the credit, because it was easier than confrontation, because I believed that doing the right thing would eventually speak for itself. Well, it finally had. And now the world was listening. I called Natalie back the following Monday and said 3 words, "Let's do it." Filming began 2 weeks later. A small crew came out, respectful and quiet, treating the house like sacred ground. I told my story in fragments, sitting on the edge of the dock one day, standing in the sunlit kitchen the next. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't have to. The truth had weight. More than once, a cameraman would lower his equipment and just stare, like he couldn't believe I'd endured all that without burning the place down. They captured every inch of the house. The corner where I'd first peeled back warped wallpaper to reveal hardwood. The notch in the windowsill where I'd once dropped a hammer in frustration. The shelves I'd built to hold books I never had time to read. They made it beautiful. No, they showed that it already was. The episode aired 3 weeks before Brielle's wedding. It exploded. I didn't expect that. Sure, I knew the network had decent reach, but I underestimated the appetite people had for a good redemption arc, especially one that involved family betrayal and a handcrafted lake house. Comments flooded in. DMs too. Strangers told me I'd inspired them, that they were picking up hammers, confronting toxic relatives, learning to stand up for themselves. And then came the press. Local news first, then a popular podcast. A home design magazine requested an interview. People started calling the lake house the restoration that fought back. Someone made a time-lapse TikTok of the before and afters and layered it with some cinematic track. Millions of views. Meanwhile, Brielle's wedding planning was unraveling in real time. The wedding planner that had dropped them? Turned out she did PR consulting too. Her statement, because yes, she posted a public statement, said she couldn't ethically represent a couple whose story involved appropriation of another's labor and legacy. Landon tried to clap back online, but made things worse. His angry posts were screen-capped, dissected, and memified. A particularly viral one said, "He got the house. What more does he want?" The top reply? "Respect. But I guess that's not your department." The venue canceled next. Not because they were petty, but because of the attention. "We're a family-oriented location," the email said, "and we want to avoid association with controversy." They scrambled to rebook. I know because my mom texted me, again, "Are you happy now?" I didn't answer. Because, honestly, I wasn't happy. Not in a smug way. Not in a petty, dancing on their failure way. I was free. And freedom felt a lot like peace. I closed on the house 2 weeks later. Natalie wasn't the buyer. She had just opened the door. The real buyer was a retired doctor and his husband, both of whom had watched the episode and driven all the way from Maine to see the place in person. They didn't haggle. They said they saw the value, not just in the materials, but in the soul of the home. They promised to honor it. Keep it as it was. I believed them. The check cleared. I walked out of the title office with a folder in one hand and a quiet mind. I didn't even look back. That night, I stayed in my new place, a modest cabin a few towns over. Still near water, still surrounded by trees. Smaller, simpler, but it was mine. I built new bookshelves, set up a workshop out back, finally unpacked the old guitar I hadn't touched in years. A few nights before the wedding, I got one last message from Brielle. You ruined everything. I hope you're proud. I read it while lying in a hammock on my porch, listening to frogs croak in the distance. I thought about all the times I'd bent myself into knots to avoid being the bad guy. How I'd swallowed resentment like cough syrup, believing the bitterness was my burden to bear. And now, they wanted me to feel guilty for finally standing up. I didn't reply. The wedding happened anyway, barely. Someone tagged me in a blurry photo. Backyard setup. Folding chairs. A banner that looked like it had been hung last minute. Brielle smiled wide, but her eyes were tight. Landon looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from my dad. Handwritten. 2 pages. The first was angry, disappointment, accusations. After all we did for you. But halfway through it shifted. His sentences slowed. Got messy, eh? By the end, he wrote, I guess I didn't realize how much you gave up. Maybe I didn't want to. I thought you were doing it for all of us. Maybe I didn't think to ask if anyone was doing it for you. He didn't apologize. But I didn't need him to anymore. Because I knew the truth now. I had built that house for me. They just got lucky enough to be invited in. And when they overstepped, I finally remembered how to close the door. I folded the letter, tucked it away, and stepped outside. The trees swayed gently in the breeze. The water glistened in the evening sun. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to thank me. I had already thanked myself.